The Radio Forest Podcast.
Hey, Forrest, this is Steve Vai calling.
It's an honor to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, are you still riding motorcycles?
Well, I just sold my the last bike I had last month because I'm planning after this next tour to eventually get something more practical for me to ride.
What kind of practicality are you talking about?
Well, the bike that the last bike I had, it was a real kind of a stylized old school. It's called a pan shovel head. It's got like a stick shift and a foot clutch and really giant ape hanger bars and stuff. And it's very difficult to ride, especially in LA traffic. And I had it for quite a while, and I think it's time to get something that's a little more practical.
Is that the red one?
Actually, no, that's a knucklehead that I had. That's in the Hard Rock Cafe. Sort of like it's a museum type of a bike, but I rode that for many years too. That was a tough one too because it was stick shift and foot clutch.
I actually almost bought another bike this week. It's like the addiction, it doesn't really go away. I think it changes throughout the year. You go through like different styles and different ideas and different kinds of bikes, and you see something or you run into something. And this kind of, relates to Gash. We've got the new album Vai Gash out now, and this was your buddy that ended up passing away, and he was a big bike guy. So how did your love for bike start, and how did Gash's love for bike start?
Well, good question, and it's such an interesting story how this record came about. For me, I always, besides being primarily drawn to being a musician, when I was younger, I was into the bike culture. I used to, when I was 12, 13, I'd build motorbikes and mini bikes, and my brother had a Harley, and I always wanted one, but I could never afford one, and he hung out with like bikers and, that whole group of, we called them greasers. And they were really a great group of guys. They were tough. They partied hard. They fought, but they had these very warm hearts. And the biker culture is a kind of a phenomenon, because if you're a biker, you get it. If you're kind of like a motorcycle enthusiast and you're trying to explain the joys of riding a motorcycle, you hear these guys waxing on poetically about the freedom of the road. But it's true, there's this feeling when when riding motorcycles resonates with you. It's just really wonderful. It's open, it's freedom. It's a kind of a feeling of freedom, and you're with your friends. And Johnny had the same kind of a upbringing. Johnny Gash Sombrato was his name. And he was a hard-edged New York Italian, Long Island biker guy. And he got the name Gash because when he was 21, he was riding his bike along these power lines, and he got lost. So he climbed one of the electrical towers to see where he was. And while he was up there, the electricity arced, and it actually went in top of him and came out the bottom. And he fell 30 feet onto a barbed wire fence, and he caught fire. 60% of his body was just charred. Luckily, his face was untouched, but he miraculously survived this thing. And eventually he moved out to California, where we started riding heavily together. And Johnny was just this unbelievable type of a guy. You really had to know him. He was crazy. He was completely unpredictable, charming, lovable, charismatic, insane. One of these guys, they walk into a room and they light up. He didn't even have to try, and he was just the life of the party. And we had so many great rides, and we had our group of people. At one point, because I'm a musician, I just thought, I want to write a record that feels like this feeling I get when I'm riding, and, incorporate into it the nostalgia of the 70s, because I was a big rock and roll guy and a kid in the 70s. As a teenager, it was like, Led Zeppelin, Steppenwolf, Queen, Deep Purple, all the great rock music of the 70s. But nothing really fit what I wanted to hear when I was riding. So I stopped everything I was doing, and I went into the studio, and this was in like 92. And I just blasted this record out in like a week. It's like a stream of consciousness. And I was just feeling that feeling of being on the bike, and I wanted it to come out in the music. So I knew it was going to be very straight ahead, no big long guitar solos. It's not a conventional kind of a record for me. It's really my love for that simple, straight-ahead, melodic, uplifting, powerful, empowering rock music. And I blasted this record out, and when I went to put vocals on it, I didn't realize Gash could sing at the time. I don't even think he knew. And I was just, matter of fact, in an act of desperation, I tried singing it myself, and that was an abysmal failure because I don't have that kind of rock and roll voice. I would listen to Gash just every now and then. He'd like throw out a, like a Led Zeppelin style, ooh yeah, something like that. And I'm like, what is that? There's something in that voice, So I took him into the studio, and I just couldn't believe what came out of his mouth. It was so authentic sounding and so connected, and so there was no excuses in it. And it totally captured his personality. There's a playfulness, an intensity, a devil-may-care attitude, and it was perfect. It was just perfect. And we had our record, and we listened to it. We got a kick out of it. And I had to get back to various projects that I was, commissioned to deliver. And I always felt I wanted to get back to kind of fleshing out some more songs for this record because there was only 8 of them. One of the songs I had written with Nikki Sixx, and I got Gash on it to demo the song. And so we had that too. So tragically, when I wanted to work more on this record, Gash was killed in a motorcycle accident. And I was just so disheartened. I took the whole project and just put it on the shelf for 30 years. And I started listening to it probably 20 years ago. And I would listen to it a few times a year, every year, usually around the anniversary of his passing. And, eventually I started feeling, you know what, I like this. I think other people will like it. I should put it out. I got to mix it. I would keep threatening myself that I was going to mix it, but then finally I just thought, I'm going to give this to my buddy Mike Frazier, who mixed it. And and it came out Friday, and I'm so happy with it.
It's got that old feel, but it doesn't sound old. It doesn't sound 20, 30 years old. And is this then his first time he's ever sang? It's amazing.
Yep. It's the first time. And he never sang before it, really. I mean, he sang, but not rock and roll that I know of. He would show me videos that he made for his dad singing Frank Sinatra. And that was amazing. It was remarkable. I couldn't believe it. And, I've worked with a lot of great lead singers, and I've worked with a lot of lead singer rock stars. I had the great privilege of working like with Frank Zappa and Graham Bonnet and Dave Roth and David Coverdale and Ozzy and so many of these guys. And, what I've noticed, and I've recorded a lot of them, what I've noticed is that there's a particular lead singer DNA. Sometimes it's called lead singer syndrome, guitar player syndrome, or drummer syndrome. There's personality traits that go into it. And when those people, the ones that are really extroverted and just real bosses, that have that charisma and can stand in front of an audience and permeate them with their egos and just be captivating, that's very rare. I mean, there's a big difference between a great lead singer and a rock star, And Gash was both. He had the voice and he had the swagger in bucket loads. Whenever I listen to this record, I see him in my mind's eye on that stage, because I played that arena stage every place in the country with these kinds of guys. And I just see him just owning it, being that thing that people just get such a kick out of.
And I saw that you recently got back the Swiss cheese guitar from the Yankee Rose video. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's another weird kind of surprise and delight. That guitar was stolen from me 36 and a half years ago, and I thought it was gone. It was made for me by my best friend at the time, Joe DeSpag. He would make all these wacky guitars for me, and he made the Swiss cheese guitar, which is totally unique. And it was stolen during rehearsals with Dave Roth. And I had used it in the Yankee Rose video, and I was planning on taking it on tour, putting it through the gauntlet. And it was gone. And 36 and a half years later, it submerges. And there was this young kid, 21-year-old kid, that discovered it in the attic of his grandparents' house in Tijuana, Mexico. And it was if it was never even opened. And he somehow recognized it and returned it to me.
Should do like a tour. It would be like you, Frampton, and then I think Joe Perry had one that was missing for like 20 years that Slash had. It seems to happen a lot, but these guitars, now it's been 20 years, they make their way back to you like it's meant to be.
I guess it's a small world.
Any chance you're still doing beekeeping?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, I love that. I did some back in my hometown, and I was just always impressed how I was impressed how it changed. Eventually, it got to a point where I just had the mask and the gloves on. The bees got used to me. It became like real calming. At first, it's super like, oh, man, stressful. But then I found it super calming.
Yeah, same here. I started doing it 25, 30 years ago because I just was researching how to pollinate the property. You know, I thought that's a quirky hobby, beekeeping. But I got into it, and man, just like you said, when you're in with the bees, it's like you're with nature. You know, you're really close to it, and you have to give it your presence and your attention, or you can get in trouble. But yeah, at one point I had 7 colonies, and one year we harvested 600 pounds of liquid honey. It was amazing.
Now, do you have to get a new queen and a new, like, every year set up another whole colony, or can they stick around for a year? Because I know that, like, there's been issues with bees, obviously, but sometimes don't they only last a year or two and then they take off or pass away or die? Or are you able to keep them year to year?
Well, a queen can be in a hive for several years, and she may make a journey. So they only make 2 journeys, the queen. One, when they're first around, they go out and they get inseminated, and then they're good for their whole life. But then at some point, they swarm. And they take about half of the hive with them. And this is how they propagate. You know, the queen will leave and take about half the hive, and then the hive will rear another queen. So if you ever see like those big swarms of bees, that's the queen taking half of the hive, and then usually they land. And while they're hanging in a tree or something nearby, you see the big giant ball of bees. There's a committee of bees that goes out and looks for a new hive for them. And that's when you can capture that swarm. And I've done that many.
You have? Wow.
Oh, yeah, many times. That's how you get more hives. You capture a swarm that has the queen, and you put them in a really nice colony, and then they love it, and they start doing their thing.
Wow. That's awesome. I could talk to you about bees for all day, but
I know.
I really like the new album a lot. It's got that old feel, but it is remnant of the Zeppelin and the Judas Priest and the Motley Crue, and they all are tied to motorcycles, and this is tied to motorcycles. It's just a good rockin' record, and I really appreciate the phone call today. And congratulations. It looks like it's doing really well and selling for you. So, hey, Steve Vai, thank you for the call today, man.
Thank you so much, Forrest. We'll see you.